Since being announced at E3 in 2017, now almost 5 years ago, which sounds insane to say, the eye I kept on Tunic had slowly drifted away. Not necessarily that my interest waned, just that time went on and other things caught my attention. It was sort of sudden to me when I saw days before its release that the day was coming. I figured I'd played nothing but Elden Ring for a while, and a game that is visually night and day from that would be a pleasant break. The way I'm saying this, it seems like I'm setting it up to suggest that the only departure is the visuals, and I would reveal that Tunic is just as grueling and oppressive as Elden Ring. Well, while it's definitely more relaxed, there are some striking similarities. However, I mean it in the most complimentary sort of way. Believe me, I am one to quickly roll my eyes when someone reviews a game and compares it to Dark Souls. That's particularly because normally, when people do it, the only thing that's really similar is that you have a roll and things hit you, or that it's difficult, as though that's the main feature of FromSoft's games. Additionally, while it is undeniable that games take influence from other games, I think it's a disservice how often I see reviews comment on a game purely from a comparative stance. Tunic has parallels to those games, but it stands so much on its own merits. I want to get the base comparison out of the way quickly because that's not really what I want to highlight in this video, but I do want to clarify the aspects that are similar. There's the typical hit and roll combat, you drop your currency on the ground when you die for you to return and grab, you have flasks, and there are effectively bonfires that reset the world, recharge your flasks, and allow you to upgrade your stats. Individually, I understand that these are just concepts in a void, but when done in marriage, it does resemble a similar experience. Tunic is simpler in its approach to these, and naturally the feel will change when you go from a third-person camera to an isometric perspective. I'm not here to talk about the combat very much though, I think it's serviceable and felt fine. What I do want to talk about are the creative aspects of the level design. While I am going to compare some aspects of Dark Souls or whatever to Tunic, I'm not suggesting by any means that Tunic has ripped off any ideas, nor do I think FromSoft has ownership of any of these concepts. In fact, I'm doing so because I want developers to take note of these things, as though there are any listening right now. And because I did just play Elden Ring, it's fresh in my head, keeping in mind that considering Tunic's development time, there's no way it took anything specifically from Elden Ring. You start off by waking up on a shore. Nothing tells you what's going on, and nothing tells you where to go. You see a doorway, naturally you're going to go in. You're given a stick, a pop-up tells you to open your inventory. There are 3 button prompts, it's equipped to the one you pressed, and that button will use it. Tutorial done, go hit things now. It's succinct, it's clean, it works. Nothing is specifically extraordinary yet, we're only 2 minutes into the game, but the presentation is simple and intriguing. What stood out to me is, much like those aforementioned FromSoft games, there's little hand-holding. A simple explanation of how to play and you're on your way, figure it out. That is not to say there aren't clues. For instance, while you aren't told where to go, you're definitely funneled in a certain direction initially. There are ways you can't go yet, but as you continue progress, the world will open up. And for games like this, I think the seamless communication of where to go is important. No waypoints, no screen markers, nothing to distract you from being actually engaged in the world in front of you, and nothing to interrupt it. Because of that, you begin to notice things. One big aspect of FromSoft games is the level design, that labyrinthian layout where corridors lead back into one another. You'll open passages you couldn't enter before to lead back to where you came, making it easier to go back through should you die. Tunic's world works a lot like that, however a big standout difference is obviously the camera. The isometric view without allowing manual camera rotation gives Tunic a lot of chances to obscure what you see, hiding an abundance of passages and secrets. Some of my favorite moments were when I'd emerge from a dungeon to find that I'm back where I've been, and that there was actually nothing stopping me from having gone the way I just exited. I just didn't see it. While a lot of these are set up in ways that a new player would obviously not think of, and some of them do have obscured paths to keep you from going back through the exit first, it does allow for replaying the game some quicker pace. You know the way the world is connected now, and some of the more expected and slower routes meant to herd you along can be skipped. There are also some Metroidvania elements where you'll get tools that help you cross paths in areas you've been that you couldn't before, so despite the world not exactly being gargantuan, these elements and the interconnected world allow for some dense content. The more I played, the more I was conditioned to check every obscured spot just to see if it was hiding something. On the topic of hiding something, though, enters what is my favorite aspect of the whole game. Before I say anything, I do want to say that there will be some spoilers here for some cool things that I think anyone even slightly interested in this game should experience before having it spoiled. While spoilers are kind of implied in my videos, this is stuff that I think makes Tunic special. Early on, you'll pick up a page of a booklet, the game's manual. It's a loving throwback to an older era of games with physical manuals and instruction guides. You're given simple instructions by a foreign language created for the game mixed with English. Ring the east bell, ring the west bell. Got it. The more you continue the game, the more pages you receive. For quite a while, I paid little attention to the details on these pages. I had a feeling there was some way to translate the language, but I didn't pay much mind to that. I figured it was mostly some extra flavoring amidst the instruction via English and illustration, and I suspected little necessary among the pages beyond that. It was later when I realized there is some good reason to pay attention to it. There was a page I got that mentioned a boss in the West Garden, and suggesting 3 in my attack and defense stats. However, I had no idea how to even see my stats, nor did I know how to upgrade. So I unwittingly fought this boss with base stats. It was actually an accident later where I was at a shrine and had selected one of the upgrade materials, which otherwise just gives you a few question marks. I then looked at the page more clearly and realized it did tell me how to upgrade already, and the next boss, on whom I'd been stuck dealing little damage, was suddenly a more palatable fight, and the reason I didn't know how to check my stats is because that's hidden until you use these resources. I decided to look at some of the other pages more thoroughly too. That's when I realized you could also sprint. Some other things would stand out, like an often mentioned holy cross, or these little hints to other pages, or that you could pray, which would allow you to both access a series of teleporters and destroy obelisks throughout the world. It was a little shameful that I'd been stuck figuring out what to do before I realized this, because that's actually how to progress the game. But it did make me appreciate how the manual acted as a method of learning, even if I foolishly neglected it prior. I actually had to think and interpret what the game was telling me, and it felt satisfying, rather than a prompt telling me what button to press when I need to. Not to say no game should ever do that, obviously a lot of this design has to be deliberate, but I appreciate Tunic's delivery, especially because once you notice these things, you start to pay more attention. I'm not going to go through every page, so I'm going to skip to what really blew me away. I'd beaten the game, but I knew of the mountain door at the top of the world, and there was no way it couldn't be open, there's even a page for it. So since the game allows you to continue playing, I kept going. Once you have access to this little zippy dash, you can get a page that had tantalized from early on. It reveals an aspect of the game I had not anticipated. The D-pad had no functionality, which wasn't a big deal, but I thought it was surprising because there are definitely ways it could have been used. But suddenly, you're shown some directional input and images of these doors that had stood out around the world. Go up to one of them, put in that code via the D-pad, and voila, they open. Much like the reaction I had when paths would reconnect into one another, I had a huge grin, wondering what else could have been hiding in front of me. The following page is found past one of these doors and pictures a previously visited golden obelisk with a similar pattern as the doors. Between the page you get there and another, you're given another pattern to input and a list of locations. This code will lead you to spots around the world that also have puzzles to solve that involve putting in a pattern, and you'll have to figure that out based on the surroundings. Some of these range from tracing a path of flowers, to following the trail made by moss in a wall, to using the reflection of water in a cavern. Be they easy or hard, they'll spawn a fairy. Once you have enough, and you find where they're gathered, they'll give you yet another page that shows you a list of additional secrets. All of these numbers correspond to a page or two that contain more secrets, like one on the very first page you unlock, with a mysterious chest pictured at the starting area. All of these lead to special treasure, and one even required a combined use of 2 magic items that I had no indication was even a function in this game until I saw this clue. However, those additional secrets didn't solve the mountain door, especially since one of the secrets requires page 1, still unowned. On the backside of the fairy location page is a gold page with a grid of numbered cells, right beside that page showing an angry fox and the mountain door. Amidst all of the secrets and interesting information already found in the manual, I was amazed they were still able to hide one more secret among them. All of these numbers also correspond to a page, and each will contain some sort of pattern to draw into the cell. Some of these require a lot of studying to discover, one of which I'm incredibly impressed by whoever figured it out. I'm not going to spoil it, but I had to look it up, and if you don't know which one I mean, it's the clue on page 9. Once you've figured out all of the puzzles, you're given a large pattern to put in at the foot of the door, where you'll find the cover and first page of the book. I was pretty surprised by the varying degree of difficulty for some of the pieces, and I definitely had to look up some help for some of them. It was really impressive that what began as this cute homage to old games' instruction manuals was more than just nice presentation, but actually contained secrets upon secrets, right down to one combining all of the pages except for the first one. Initially it seems like you're done. This page has a thank you message from the devs and gives you a couple last hints, and you assume that's it. But if you've tried to get all the special treasure, you'll still be short one. Parsed by the information you're given on page 51 and 1, you're meant to turn off the game's sound and stand in water for 60 seconds. Afterward, open to page 1 and unveiled is a secret message as well as a location in the world. Admittedly, I looked up the translated message. As I said, I figured the language could be translated, but I wasn't going to be the one to do it. Solving the riddle you're given and putting in the code at that spot will give you the last treasure. If you do end up going to the mentioned secret treasure room, you're actually left with another thing to solve. Admittedly, again, I looked this one up because it involved translating something on page 54. You're told to put in the Mountain Doors code but in reverse, which will then give you a message which links to a website which involves some cryptic nods to some lore. Might be for fun, might be a nod to potential DLC, I'm not sure. Regardless of which one, I just couldn't help but be impressed by how much stuff was snuck in here. If you go further, there are pages that can be translated to explain the story and world more to help fill in the blanks between what you figured out on your own. I can easily say I have never been this engaged with a game's manual. Obviously, games I've played before probably never needed anything like this, even games of which Tunic is paying homage, so I'm not going to suggest this wasn't by design. It was just a different method of instructing you on what you should do, and you probably couldn't just throw this idea into any game. But comparing this method to a game that bombards you with wordy description, and you can see how nice Tunic's method is. Games telling you the controls via UI when needed is fine, but the cleverness of Tunic to surround those instructions with things that will catch your eye and stick with you, leading to more and more revelations, was super clever. Tunic is not a perfect game, but it's definitely one I'm going to remember. While I appreciate the clean, striking visuals, the nice music, the simplistic but engaging combat, and the great level design, it's the creativity of the manual and its method of divulging information to the player that wowed me. I don't mean this in a pessimistic way, but it's kind of hard for games to find a big way to innovate right now. A lot of games trend on iteration, improving upon past ideas. I've already compared Tunic to Dark Souls, and I imagine anyone who's heard of Tunic has also seen its comparison to older Zelda games. I mean, the game is called Tunic for a reason. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm not suggesting there aren't new ideas all the time or that no one else ever innovates, but this one felt so novel. To play a game that's able to catch me off guard with this type of innovation, I think it's really special. So if you haven't played Tunic and plan to now because you watched this, or you already played it, or hell, if you still aren't going to, I hope you can find some appreciation for what I've talked about here. As always, thanks for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one.